Hello everyone. Today we will be discussing about the five different barriers that come under innate immunity. So when we think about immunity, the first question which comes to our mind is how does an immune response take place? An immune response consists of two primary activities. The first one is recognition. So over here the body is able to differentiate between any foreign cells which are non-self cells, and it recognizes your own body cells which are your self cells. So now the body will not attack your own body cells, and thus this is a very important property. However, if there is any defect in this, then it could lead to an autoimmune disease. Also, the immune system can recognize certain subtle differences which are chemical in nature between foreign molecules. So it can then differentiate between the different types of pathogens, and accordingly an immune response is mounted against them. The second activity is response. So there are two immune responses that we know of. The first one is a primary response. So in this figure over here, you can see that the primary response is when a new pathogen is initially coming in contact with your body for the first time and attacking it. Since it is a new kind of molecule, the immune system would take some time to recognize it and accordingly generate antibodies against it. However, if this same pathogen is attacking your body again, there are certain memory cells which are already present in your body specific to that pathogen. So now they will get activated on exposure to this pathogen, and now they will differentiate into plasma cells. Hence, in this figure over here, you can see that a secondary response compared to a primary response is more rapid and intense, and also it is more specific to the pathogen. So, because of these memory cells that I just spoke about, the antibodies which are generated will be of greater affinity and specificity. So this flowchart over here is giving you an overview of all the different types of immunity that you have. So the first one you have is the native or innate immunity. So the word native itself suggests that this was the first type of immunity that developed, and this is why it is found in all multicellular organisms. It is present since birth, and it is non-specific in nature, which means that it would act on all kinds of pathogens. And the second one is the acquired or adaptive immunity. This evolved much later than the innate immunity, and that is why it is only present in vertebrates. So, vertebrates would have a mix of innate as well as adaptive immunity. Okay, so this is highly specific in nature in response to the pathogen, because this would only develop during your lifetime when you have actually come in contact with that pathogen. So, acquired immunity has two types. First is the active immunity, which would develop in response to an infection or vaccine. In natural active immunity, when your body has come in contact with the pathogen, there is an infection, and the immune system would then produce antibodies in response to that infection to clear it out. And in artificial active immunity, vaccines are being given to you. So this vaccine could contain a dead virus or an inactivated or attenuated virus, which is injected into your blood. Once it is in your blood, the immune system would recognize it as it would recognize it as a foreign particle, and then antibodies are produced against it. Then the second type of adaptive immunity is the passive immunity. This develops after antibodies are being supplied to you externally. So, in natural passive immunity, you are receiving antibodies from colostrum or your mother's breast milk from when you were a baby. So, colostrum is highly abundant in IgG, and it also contains IgM and IgA. And artificial passive immunity contains uh, preformed antibodies which are being given to you in the form of medicines, injections, or infusions. So these are some of the primary characteristics that come in innate immunity. First is that it serves as the first line of defense during a pathogen attack, and this is followed by adaptive immunity. Like I mentioned before, it is present since birth. It has a non specific action, so it will go and it will act on all types of pathogens, and it has no memory response. There are three different types of strategies that the innate immunity will adopt in order to fight against the pathogen. First is avoidance, where it prevents exposure of the body to pathogens. However, if the pathogen has still managed to attack the first few barriers, then resistance will come into action and it will try to eliminate or decrease the pathogen load in the body. And the third type is tolerance. So the body has a natural tolerance towards the pathogen and this will try to enhance the overall resistance mechanism. This diagram over here will show you all the five different types of barrier which come up in innate immunity. So the first is physical, then there is chemical, then there are soluble effector proteins, there is a cellular barrier, and the fifth barrier is cell associated pattern recognition receptors and sensors. So now we'll be talking about the first step of barrier, which is the physical barrier. This serves as your first line of defense during a pathogen attack. The first form of physical barrier is skin. The skin contains two layers, which is the epidermis and the dermis. In this picture over here, you can see that the epidermis is a much thinner layer. This is the outer layer of our skin. It mostly contains multiple layers of epithelial cells and it also has dead cells. Now, these dead cells have a waterproof protein that is keratin, and keratin, you would know, is the protein which is mostly found in your hair, your nails, etc. And then the inner layer is the dermis. So the dermis is much thicker compared to the epidermis and it is abundant in connective tissues, hair follicles, sweat glands, sebaceous glands, blood vessels, etc. The second form of physical barrier is mucous membrane and glandular surfaces. So mucous membranes, also known as mucosa, will line your respiratory, gastrointestinal, urinary tract, and these glandular surfaces are found in salivary, lacrimal, and mammary glands. The mucosa would produce a very high quantity of mucus. So mucus is a sticky like substance, and because of this sticky nature, it is very easily able to trap many pathogens as they circulate in the blood. So now that this mucus has trapped these pathogens, it has to be expelled out of the body or it could prove to be toxic. So this is done by two ways. This is either done by coughing or sneezing or by the movement of cilia. So cilia are these very small hair-like structures that are surrounding specialized cell types which are known as the ciliated epithelial cell types. So because of this back and forth movement of cilia, they are eventually able to remove the mucus out of your respiratory tract in a very gradual way. So, these physical barriers, unless they have been damaged in some way, like if there is a break in your skin, the pathogen would ideally not be able to evade this barrier. So, the primary function that these physical barriers serve is that they help in protecting your internal tissues, and this is why this is considered to be an avoidance strategy. So, in this figure over here, you can see that these sweat glands, these hair follicles, the secretions, and the epitheliums, they are blocking the entry of the pathogen, so they are not able to access the internal tissues. The next barrier which comes under innate immunity is the chemical barrier. Chemical and physical barriers will work together and serve as the first line of defense. So, the first type which comes under chemical barrier is acidic pH. Acidic pH is maintained in sweat, sebum, and it is also present in certain organs such as your stomach and the urogenital tract. Acidic pH would create a very unfavorable environment for the microbes, and this is why it would cause inhibition of further microbial growth. Then the next and the most important chemical barrier would be antimicrobial proteins and peptides in epithelial surfaces and mucosa. The first one is lysozyme. So lysozyme is a hydrolytic enzyme which would hydrolyze the peptidoglycan. Peptidoglycan, as most of you would know, is present in most bacterial cell walls. So if there is damage done to the peptidoglycan, then the cell walls would no longer be produced. And since the cell walls are no longer there, the cell is no longer being protected, and then it would lyse eventually, which would cause killing of the pathogen. Then there is lactoferrin and calprotectin. Calprotectin is a S100 type of protein. Both these antimicrobials have the same mode of action. So what they would do is they would bind and sequester to any free ferrous ions which are present. So Fe2 plus is a very essential ion that is required for bacterial growth. If that is no longer available, then the bacteria would no longer be able to grow and its growth is inhibited. The third type of antimicrobial is defensins. Defensins are of two types, that is alpha and beta. These are cysteine rich antimicrobial peptides. They have an array of mode of actions. I have mentioned some of these over here. So the first one is chemotaxis. Chemotaxis is a process wherein uh, signaling molecules such as chemokines are produced, which would direct the leukocytes or the white blood cells towards the site of infection, and this would enhance your immunity and the infection would get cleared as fast as possible from your body. Then there is inflammation by histamine release from mast cells. We would be looking at this in further detail in the next video. Then there's cytotoxicity, which of course would directly kill the cells. And then there's opsonization. So, opsonization will be studied under the third type of barrier, which is the soluble effector protein. Over there, we will see exactly how this process takes place. And the fourth type of antimicrobial is cathelicidin. What this would do is it would bind to the outer bacterial cell wall, and this would induce formation of micelles. These micelles would then cause dissolution of your cell membranes, and now since the cell membranes are no longer present, the inner contents of the cell will leak out and the bacterial cell will die. This micelle formation is generally seen in many detergents, so you could compare this mode of action to that of detergents. This table has been taken from QB. It is showing you all the antimicrobials which are present in your body and they serve as chemical barriers. Their location is also mentioned. So we have seen lysozyme, we have seen lactoferrin. Uh, there are some extra ones present over here. You could read about them. In this table, we can see how the physical and the chemical barriers work together in order to create anatomical barriers. So the first organ is skin. We have studied about skin in a lot of detail under physical barriers. Then comes mouth and upper alimentary canal. These would contain many enzymes and antimicrobial peptides, and there is constant directional flow of fluid towards the stomach. So nothing stays over there for a long time. Then you have the stomach. So the stomach, it has a lot of HCl, which creates an acidic environment with a pH of about 2. This would be very unfavorable for microbial growth and nothing would survive there. And it also has many digestive enzymes and antimicrobials as well. Then there's the small intestine, which again contains many enzymes and antimicrobial peptides. And the contents it has, they are constantly flowing towards the large intestine. Then comes the large intestine. So the large intestine has a very high quantity of intestinal flora. So flora would be the normal resident bacteria which live in the large intestine and contribute to the bodily functions. These flora, they would compete with the invading pathogen and they would not allow them to take place in the large intestine. Also, any toxins are released from the large intestine in the form of feces. Then the airways and lungs, they have ciliated epithelial cells, and because of the movement of cilia and because of coughing and sneezing as well, the mucus containing pathogens is expelled out of your body. The urogenital tract has a very low pH. It has an array of antimicrobial proteins and peptides, and also there is constant flushing out of any toxins or pathogens that are there in this tract by urine. And then we have the mammary glands. They again, there is a constant flushing action by secretions, and they contain many antimicrobial proteins and peptides as well. So this figure over here, this is showing you exactly which organ is present where and how they are contributing to innate immunity. Their mode of action is being shown over here in detail. So you could refer to this diagram. It will help you in developing a better understanding of what we have seen till now. So now we will be talking about the third barrier, that is soluble effector protein. This serves as a second line of defense, which means that if the pathogen has managed to evade the first line of defense, that includes your physical and chemical barriers, then this will come into action. So the first type under this is complement protein. This is synthesized in the liver and it circulates freely in blood and extracellular fluid. It will only circulate as an inactive form, which is referred to as prozyme or zymogen. Now, if this zymogen, it manages to come in contact with a pathogen, the pathogen will induce a proteolytic lysis event in your zymogen. Now, because of this proteolytic lysis, the inactive form will now transform into an active form, and this active form is known as serine protease. It is a serine protease. Okay, so this inactive form will now become a serine protease, which is the active form. So I will mark this star, meaning that it is an active form. The serine protease will further cause downstream proteolysis of many other proteins, and then eventually it is causing an enzymatic cascade. So serine protease will go and cause proteolysis of one protein. Now this protein becomes active. This protein will further activate other proteins, and like this an enzymatic cascade is getting initiated. The end result is that it will lead to destruction of the pathogen. Now these complement proteins, they act as opsonins and they will take part in a process called opsonization. We'll see how that works. So in this diagram, this is the first case, how opsonization will take place. So your antibody, it is recognizing a specific antigen which is present in your blood. Now this, if this complementary protein, that is C3b, C3b is one of the many types of complementary protein. If this manages to bind to your antibody antigen complex, this is your antibody antigen complex, and your C3 will bind over here to the antibody. If it is binding in this way, then there are no immune complexes being formed, and your infect, and what it is doing is it is marking this antibody antigen complex. It is marking this complex for phagocytosis. So because of this, your immune system will be able to quickly realize that okay, there is this antibody antigen complex and I need to destroy it. And in this way, it is enhancing your overall immunity by the antibodies. But on the other hand, if this C3b protein is not binding, then no immune complexes are being formed, and it might take a lot of time to clear out the infection, or in some cases, it may not happen at all. Then we have virus neutralization, the second case. So here the virus is binding to specific viral receptors on your host cell. Now if your C3b is it is bound to this virus, then this virus will no longer be able to bind to your host cell. So in this case, the virus is getting neutralized at the very beginning. But if C3b is not binding to this virus anymore, the virus is free now. So the virus can easily go and it will bind to the host cell and then it will lead to infection. Now the second type of effector protein is acute phase protein. These are plasma proteins like complement proteins as well. They will increase in concentration only when there is an infection. So this is very contradictory to your complement proteins. Complement proteins are freely circulating in the blood but as inactive form, but acute phase proteins are only getting produced in case of infection. Then they are synthesized in the liver and they will enhance the activation of zymogens, which is the inactive form of complement proteins, and thus it will help in opsonization as well. Some types of acute phase proteins are C-reactive proteins, serum amyloid protein, and mannose binding protein. So now we will be talking about the fourth type of barrier, which is cellular barrier that serves as the second line of defense as well. With the help of this diagram, I will explain to you how the process of phagocytosis works. So the first thing that you should know is that the phagocytic cells present in a body are monocytes in blood, and in tissues there are macrophages, neutrophils and dendritic cells. Now these phagocytic cells, they express certain specific receptors on their surfaces that will uniquely bind to complementary foreign particles like the bacterium in this case. Now, once the binding between the bacteria and the receptor has taken place, the, the receptor will induce the internalization of the bacteria into the phagocytic cell. Now, together, the bacteria and the membrane from your phagocytic cell, they will form a complex known as phagosome. Now this phagosome will further go and bind with a lysosome. There are many lysosomes present in the phagocytic cell, and now you will know the reason why they are present. So like I said, the phagosome will bind with the lysosome and they will form a phagolysosome. This is your phagolysosome, the one in blue. What happens now is that this lysosome, as you must be knowing, it has a very low pH and it has many hydrolytic enzymes as well, such as acid activated lysozymes and proteases, and there are defensins present as well. So together all of these will help in degradation of this bacteria. So you see now that this bacteria is slowly getting degraded into many tiny pieces. So this is happening because of the acidic and the action of the enzymes. Another point that I would like to add over here is that there is external oxidative attack taking place as well. This is by ROS and NOS. So ROS is reactive oxygen species and NOS is nitric oxide species. They will cause oxidative attack and they will enhance the degradation of this bacteria. Now, once this bacteria has been degraded, it is now forming soluble debris. So it is now exocytosed out of the cell, which means it is removed into the cell, into the surrounding environment. Now we'll be talking about the final fifth barrier, which comes under innate immunity, that is cell associated pattern recognition receptors and sensors. So this diagram over here will give you an exact idea of exactly how this is taking place. So first we'll be talking about damage associated molecular patterns, which are also known as DAMs. So you can see DAMs over here. They are only produced by the stress cells. They are not produced by any healthy cells. So the cell would go under stress if it is dying or if it has been damaged in some way. So these stress cells will then they will release DAM, The damp will then go and it will bind to a specific damp receptor which is on a phagocytic cell, and this will then lead to downstream induction of many different activities which would enhance the immunity. Some examples of damp would be heat shock and chromatin proteins, or fragments of extracellular matrix like fibronectin, oxidized lipoproteins, etc. Then the second type is pattern associated molecular patterns, also known as PAMPs. PAMPs are also referred to as microbe associated molecular patterns. This is a pathogen specific molecular signature, which means that these PAMPs, they are unique or highly abundant in a pathogen and not in the host. So this would help in differentiating between the pathogen and your own body cell. Different pathogens will have different PAMs. So, for example, certain bacteria will have pillin or flagellin protein. Then there is liposaccharide in the outer membrane of gram-negative bacteria, which serves as the PAM for gram-negative bacteria. Teichoic acids, which are present only in the cell wall of gram-positive bacteria, will serve as the PAM for gram-positive bacteria. And there are certain unmethylated CpG islands in bacterial genome as well. So again, using this diagram, we will see how this mode of action takes place. So the pathogen, it has a PAMP. This PAMP will go and bind to PRR. PRR is nothing but a pattern recognition receptor. These pattern recognition receptors, they are generally expressed by all cell types. However, they are highly abundant in only antigen presenting cells, also known as APC, or phagocytic cells. Like we discussed prior, there are many types. There's monocytes, there's neutrophils, there's macrophages. So once this PAMP has successfully bound to the PRR on APC, it would lead to downstream intracellular signal transduction activity, which would lead to activation of various cellular responses. So, some of these activities would include, like, it would go and induce the nitric oxide synthase to produce more nitric oxide species. So, there is more oxidative damage done to the phagocytosed pathogen. Another example of this activity could be that it is inducing the release of histamine by mast cells, which would lead to tissue inflammation. So, due to this tissue inflammation, there is vasodilation of your blood cells. So, now more blood containing white blood cells and other immune cells will travel to the site of infection in order to neutralize the pathogen. There is also chemokines and cytokines, which would lead to chemotaxis of the leukocytes towards the site of infection. Then, many different types of immune cells are recruited in this way, and there is tissue repair as well. And tissue repair is when there is tissue remodeling done of the infected tissue. So, this is a short recap of what we saw today. First comes the first line of defense, which would include your physical as well as your chemical barriers. These are your anatomical barriers. So, the pathogen which is present on the outside, it would ideally not be able to penetrate these physical barriers unless there is a small break. So, over here you can see that the skin is broken. So, this serves as the site of entry for the pathogen. It would now be able to penetrate the physical barrier and it has now reached the internal tissues. So once this pathogen has reached the internal tissues, the second line of defense would come into action. So this would include your soluble effector proteins. Then there would be phagocytosis, which is a type of cellular barrier, and then there is the PAMPs and the DAMPs, which are released by the cells. So this would lead to many different types of downstream activities such as inflammation, production of interferons, then recruitment of many different immune cells, and this is done in order to finally neutralize or clear the infection from your body.